The Petri dish's agar jelly is perfect for microorganism growth. So too is the culture of austerity and stagflation for the bacteria of populism to feed. The conditions are perfect for these horrors to take root on the politics of these islands. The chosen champion to answer the populist challenge is Keir Starmer. The stakes could not be greater. Populism isn't just a threat to our democracy, it is the greatest challenge of our times. I come to the floor of this chamber with a warning. 1 second. This is the cartridge case of a .223 caliber Remington bullet. It is virtually the same ammunition used by NATO soldiers around the world. It was fired on October 31st, 2020, in the woods outside of McDonough, Georgia, USA, from an AR-15 by a member of a militia called the 3% Security Force. His name is Chris Hill, although he does prefer to be known as General Blood Agent. At the time, my debating partner was properly and constitutionally second in line of succession to the presidency. And while I was interviewing Chris, or Blood, I suppose that would be his moniker's given name. Maybe it's General, actually, now that I think about it. He said the following: if they do something like elect Nancy Pelosi, then I'm grabbing my firearm and I'm running out the front door screaming like a banshee. Now, as evidenced by the presence of Comrade Pelosi, here with us this evening, that version of events did not take place, not least because she wasn't standing for president. I was, however, concerned some months later to see that same AR-15 that fired this cartridge in the hands of the same militia man on the steps of Georgia's state capitol at a Stop the Steal rally, a protest against the fulfillment of America's democratic processes. The reason I'm telling you this story is not just to show that at PoliticsJOE we do more than make memes for a living, although that is partly it. It's because Chris Hill and the January 6th insurrectionists did the right thing for the wrong reasons. They were right to protest the opaque American electoral system, which, by the design of the Founding Fathers, seeks to mitigate the power of the people directly expressing their political opinions. At the time of the Philadelphia Convention, no other country directly elected its chief executive. They were wrong, though, to believe Trump to be an actor for the people, because he is, in fact, a product of the establishment, of capital. He is the swamp. He is a somewhat peculiarly populist of and within the system. Please.
Doesn't he admit that? Doesn't he declare that? Doesn't he suggest that's the reason why he supposedly can understand the corruption at the top and the elites?
He does admit it. I suppose the joke's on his followers for not realizing that when he says it, they might not trust every single thing that comes out of his mouth. Yes, he is somewhat peculiar populist of and within the system, and actually I will argue later that this is a defining characterism, actually, of modern populism and point of distinction with its previous iterations. The crux of this debate, and it's the mistake that the gentleman opposite me made in his contribution, the crux of this debate is to draw a distinction between what is simply a matter of legitimate democracy, that is, popular policy. That is not what we mean on this side by populism. I'm in favor of a widened franchise, of harnessing digital technology to foster civic engagement through direct democracy, of challenging established interests and exploding inequality. But we must do the right things for the right reasons. And actually, we must do these things for the express purpose of defeating populism. The opposition will seek to conflate democracy and populism. They already have. They are not the same thing. Do not also fall for the sleight of hand trick, the misdirection, the suggestion that populism is not as much of a threat as authoritarianism or hegemonic capital, financialization and insider trading. How all these threats to democracy relate to one another is not the matter we are here to debate today. We are debating whether populism is a threat to democracy. Last one.
Does that characterization not presume that populism cannot oppose hegemonic capitalism? Is Bernie Sanders, is Jeremy Corbyn, are they not populists?
They can, and I will come to the point that you've just made momentarily. We're debating whether populism is a threat to democracy, not less of a threat than oligarchy, not more of a threat than the Conservative Party. Is it a threat? You must hold that thought in your mind as you pass through the voting lobbies this evening. To understand my arguments, a brief definition of terms. I have taken democracy as a reference to our own democracies, that is, European and American, representative, liberal democracies. Liberal because we value populism, the rule of law, autonomous institutions, individual and group liberty. Representative to maintain a degree of distance between the electorate and difficult decisions, often with no good options, that require the balancing of a multiplicity of interests and prevent the tyranny of the majority. Guaranteed and ensured by the accountability of regular elections, with a secret ballot, free media, and a range of candidates. In most instances, the people can and should be trusted to make decisions about their own lives, but not always, and not without check or balance. An example, I host an LBC show on the weekends. Nancy, if you're not familiar, it's the supreme broadcasting organisation here in the UK. It's talk radio, it's a phone-in show. And one of the subjects I like to talk about is criminal justice, forgiveness, and the way that we wage war on the symptoms of poverty, like crime, rather than the causes of poverty. And I have spoken to many people who believe that... Bless you. Who believe that terrorists should not receive legal representation, should be tortured, or simply executed. And this was a genuine argument, executed to reduce prison overheads and create more space for other prisoners. Obviously, this evidence is anecdotal, so here's the evidential rub. The UK's last execution took place in the mid-60s. It wasn't until 2014, it took 50 years before polling showed that support for capital punishment had dipped below 50% in the general population. Now, while Lee Anderson is right that the death penalty is 100% effective at stopping criminals from committing future offences, there they are again. This is who you're in league with, pal. I'm 100% right that his populist politics threatens our democracy. Be it that we should bring back hanging, or that immigrants should, and I'm quoting here, so apologies, Mr. President, fuck off back to France. So, what do I mean by populist politics? It's anti-elite, anti-institutional. It favours mass mobilisation of the popular majority. It is majoritarian. Sorry, I'm going to make some progress now. It is majoritarian, therefore illiberal, and consequently, it is nativist. Simply put, who are the people? I would challenge all three of you to define them for us here this evening. So populism threatens the liberal and pluralistic components of our democracy. As I said previously, it is a tyranny of the majority. Clearly, it can also be a force for good in certain contexts, like widespread institutional corruption. It is the setting which shapes populism's impact on democracy. It can contribute to a more energetic national politics, economic reform, the redistribution of power and wealth. Unfortunately, mainstream parties very quickly appropriate the secondary, exclusionary aspect of the populists' programme, as you're seeing right now here in Britain, as the Tories fear losing voters to reform. What dictates whether populism is good, or bad, is its context. And let me tell you, boy, have we got some context right now. As the Petri dish's agar jelly is perfect for microorganism growth, so too is the culture of austerity and stagflation for the bacteria of populism to feed and flourish. We now face the danger, of the most successful political party in history pivoting to a populism of the radical right, as it looks for a new ideological soul in the wake of likely electoral massacre. That prospect should terrify you. You do not need to be a scholar of Hannah Arendt to understand how defining a homogeneous, pure people along usually ethno-nationalist lines in opposition to an establishment and the other leads to rifles that fire rounds, like that one, appearing outside our parliaments. The irony, no, the obscenity of modern populism is that its exponents are actually a part of the establishment they seek to weaponize their followers against, be they Trump or otherwise. The Tories are no doubt relishing the freeing prospect of decrying the woke blob and not actually being in charge of it. To malign the British establishment, which they governed for 2/3 of the 20th century and the 21st century for that matter. Finally, I would ask you to look where there are or were populists in power. Turkey, Hungary. Do you consider them flourishing democracies or the front of a democratic recession? And that is the nature of the warning I bring to you this evening, although it is twofold. First, that conditions are perfect for these horrors to take root on the politics of these islands. Second, it is our unfortunate fate that the chosen champion to answer the populist challenge is Keir Starmer. The stakes could not be greater, and the alleged solutions of the old liberal order themselves, often actually the drivers of populism itself, will not suffice. It is at best misguided to believe so. If you find any of what I've said compelling this evening, then you know the answer to the question. Populism isn't just a threat to our democracy, it is the greatest challenge of our times. Thank you.